Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Vestanland. I know it's been a couple of months since the last episode in the series, and I apologize for that. But I will get right into it here today. As you can see from this kind of cinematic shot, we're starting on the west coast of the nation of Vestanland. If you maybe notice in the background, the all the stuff we've built so far is not actually on the map, and that's because I'm starting a new city on the exact same map just to kind of hope to save on some of the FPS. Um, and yeah, I'm just gonna get right into it. As you can see, we kind of have this. There's kind of like a winding mountain road that leads down to this sort of basic two-lane highway that stretches along the coast. And then we're gonna have our little town here, kind of in a little bit of a cove or bay, right, kind of on the coastline. Um, I don't get to it in this episode, but I think the waterfront and kind of building out like a beach kind of resort town type thing would be really interesting. I also think we should do something with the proximity to the mountains. Maybe have like kind of like maybe there'll be like a ski resort up in the mountains, something like that. Anyway, there's a lot of potential opportunities here. But before I get into any of that, I got to lay down just kind of a basic street grid. Not really grid, kind of just a street network, more so. And yeah, kind of demolishing a few of the trees. I also lowered down the highway a little bit there. Did a little bit of terraforming, as you can see right now. I wanted to make the coast a little bit more kind of craggy. Do some natural details where maybe I add some cliffs or rocks, stuff like that. But yeah, the first part of this episode is really just getting everything set up so that we have more interesting town and more interesting landscape to build around. Another thing I'm doing is adding just at least the backbone of a train station here. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to link into, or theoretically link into the rest of the network. Obviously, there's the big mountain range between here and the rest of the cities and towns. So there might be something to do with like I don't know, maybe we could build like a massive tunnel. That would not be like an actual build within game. It'd be more of like a just within the backstory. Maybe that they build like a base tunnel to connect this town to the rest of the country, something like that. But anyway, that's something for the future. As I was mentioning earlier, a big part of this town is going to be the waterfront. So I thought it was important to set up a key. Yeah, we've got. I like this. The sand texture in this theme, I think, looks really good. I think it looks realistic, especially since this isn't really any kind of like a tropical area. I think it's good to have kind of a darker colored sand. I also wanted this kind of peninsula to be a little bit more of a headland, kind of raised up from the rest of the town. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to build on this little spot here. It's probably going to be, at least now, maybe it's going to be more like fancier houses or something. But maybe there's some kind of historic significance, and yeah, maybe there'll be some kind of natural rock outcroppings and stuff, kind of similar to the previous episode that I built a few months back. Now I'm doing a little bit more with the actual street grid. Again, kind of upgrading some of these roads to make them look a little bit more realistic, adding some alleys and stuff like that. I also kind of did the basics of kind of like a hillside neighborhood here. I wanted this highway to kind of look like it was built in like a trench almost, so that the existing roads kind of just go right over it. And as you'll see here, that's kind of what I did. I lowered it down and kind of into the earth, and then this road here is going to wind up along the hillside. We'll probably put some residential up there. Maybe that'll lead to again maybe like a ski resort, like I was talking about earlier. Another thing you'll notice is that I'm trying to follow these kind of natural looking outlines of farms. Obviously, they aren't functional in game, but I like the idea of having some baseline for how the town maybe grew up around farms and kind of natural features. I think it makes it look a lot more interesting. And yeah, that's something I kind of did in previous episodes, but I thought it was a good thing to mention at the start of this town. Speaking of the start of the town, I'm placing down the first buildings here. I'm also dragging out some pedestrian paths to kind of just define where the different blocks are going to be. I want this kind of downtown area to be super detailed and have a lot of pedestrian only areas. That's why I'm laying out some of the paths a little bit earlier on. As you can see, I'm using a lot of, I mean, it's the same kind of style of buildings that I've been using in previous episodes in the series. It's a lot of just kind of basic Central Northern European buildings, and then adding a few of the more like steeper pitched red roofed buildings, which maybe I guess are more like Renaissance style. But I think it works. I think it looks good. I tried to factor in a couple of the sort of like orange colored roofs. I think those look interesting. I'm gonna try to base this town off of not necessarily anywhere specific, but a couple of towns in Norway, which I think kind of makes sense. A lot, this being kind of between the sea and some really steep mountains. Um, so yeah, hopefully some of that inspiration comes through. I'm going to be using procedural objects pretty heavily again to kind of especially to customize these corner buildings. I found I mean, obviously that's the most effective way of getting these kind of awkward shapes, um, and getting them to fit in really nicely. Another thing, this is me using procedural objects here again. This is a building I used in Nyrstad in the main city. But again, I'm using procedural objects to kind of shrink it down, make it fit for the scale of this town a little bit better. And again, this is the kind of main road that this town is going to be kind of built up around. It's what I focus on in this episode. I do a ton of detailing. Um, and yeah, I guess I should probably spend a little bit of time talking about why I kind of abandoned my series in CS2. That's hopefully it will come back at some point. I was just kind of, as I was building that city, I felt like I was not really adding anything to the community necessarily. I mean, I feel like everyone's city kind of looks the same just because it's all the same kind of lighting and buildings and stuff like that. So yeah, once CS2 kind of has the mod and asset collection that is at least maybe comparable to CS1, I'll definitely try it again and hopefully get back into that city because I think it definitely has a ton of potential. Speaking of the road networks, as you can see, I kind of originally just used the vanilla roads to kind of draw things out, and now I'm switching over to the curbless road pack. These are obviously I'm using ones right here that have the curbs built in, but there's also like matching roads that don't have any curbs, which are a lot better for doing really detailed intersections, especially when you have awkward angles and stuff like that. And these are all the same exact width as those, so it'll make it a little bit more seamless to fit in. These are also a little bit narrower than the standard vanilla roads, which I think is going to be good. Yeah, this is the intersection that I spent the most time detailing kind of throughout the episode. I use a ton of intersection marking tool, as I kind of always have. Um, and yeah, I do a ton of road markings, ton of detailing. You'll see this kind of come together as I go through the video. Um, Again, I'm making sure to vary all of the line widths and kind of make sure everything looks consistent for the different purposes. This is something I didn't really focus on or I haven't focused on in the series up to this point, but I'm using the Bob mod to replace all of the props that come with the roads because a lot of them just have the vanilla props, and I'm just switching those out for more realistic looking ones. I think that makes a big difference, particularly with the road arrows and then kind of some of the no turn signs, as you saw me doing a little bit earlier. These arrows are a lot more realistic looking. They kind of have like a sort of distressed texture to them a little bit. Looks like they've been worn a little bit more, which I think is good. Now I'm going to start going, or at least start going through and upgrading more of these roads. I wanted to kind of think about kind of how the traffic is going to flow. This is something I imagine has been kind of changed recently, changing these sort of major roads to being all one way, especially in the town center. I found that's something that's done a lot of times to kind of, if there's a lot of people around, kind of to make things a little bit, not sure what the word is, but just to make things a little bit, flow a little bit better, make things safer, especially for pedestrians. I'm placing down here another one of these kind of angled buildings, which really work really well, especially when paired with procedural objects. I apologize here coming up. I lost a lot of footage, especially I think it's probably starts like as I'm doing this. Yeah, this is something a really cool build. I did this made this really super detailed church. It kind of is built up on a little bit of a hill. It's got some really cool staircases and stuff. Unfortunately, I lost all the footage of it, so I sort of chucked in a cinematic video to kind of update the progress. Sorry for that. I promise it looked pretty cool. But anyway, getting back into what I'm actually building, I'm kind of again extending the road detailing, replacing the markings, using intersection marking tool to kind of unify everything. And yeah, this town overall. I'm going to be spending a lot more time on kind of the finer detailing. I think this is probably a good point as any to speak on why I decided not to continue with, or at least not continue right now with City Skylines 2. Basically, my mindset was I didn't really feel like I was adding anything necessarily. I didn't think I could. I don't really have the time or the like technical knowledge to talk about like the sort of intricacies of actually playing the game and like strategy and stuff. So I felt like I was just going to be describing kind of a similar city to everyone else was going to build. So I didn't feel like it was going to be that interesting. Having said that, I hope that when City Skylines 2 eventually gets kind of the ad or excuse me, odds and assets collection that City Skylines 1 has, hopefully I'll have the ability in that game to build cities like this that are really detailed and maybe aren't, focused too much on this actual city simulation part of it, but are just more interesting and like make it so that it's possible to actually like build out a story and kind of like a history of a country like I'm doing here. Um, anyway, having said all that, I am now getting into more of the important detailing work in this game, which right now I'm doing. This is something I end up changing. I felt I'd put it in so I could talk about it here. I was going to do procedural objects like surfaces on all of these sidewalks, and eventually I realized it was super tedious and not worth doing at all, especially since I'm intentionally building on a little bit of a height difference just because again, this is kind of on the side of a mountain, so it wouldn't make sense for this to be perfectly flat. I also remembered Acruis did try to do this in Altengrad like 3 years ago, and it didn't work then. It doesn't work now. But yeah, anyway, this is me deleting that, a little bit of a failed experiment. And now I am doing something which I think is pretty cool using the intersection marking tool functionality. This is something that has been a part of the mod for a little while now, but you can use decorative networks as a line type in the mod. And what I'm doing here is I'm making these kind of different textured stone sidewalks, but instead of using like an actual sidewalk network, I'm using a one of the I'm not sure what pack it's from, but it's like a pack of standalone train station platforms which come as networks, and it works pretty much perfectly for what I'm trying to do here because I need the textures of the sidewalk to kind of follow these curves in the road, or at least I don't need them to, but this is kind of the best way to do it that I've found. And if you zoom in like super close, it looks kind of weird, especially when the corners are really sharp. But from any kind of distance away, I think it looks really good and kind of it looks like the sidewalks are kind of flowing along with the roads, which I think is cool. Um, yeah, this is something I sort of again, this is one other thing that I kind of keep doing throughout the episode. So I'm not gonna mention it every time, but I think it does a really good job of tying things together. You'll see this a little bit later on, but I basically use this like the sort of extent of these sidewalks to kind of mark the area that I've been working on or kind of am done with. Something that's kind of a thing I like to do, and something I'll probably continue to do a little bit further on. Speaking of the kind of road detailing, I again it's sort of this main kind of east west. I guess it would be east west. No, sorry, north south road is going to be one way through the city. It's going to mirror the kind of waterfront road. And then all of these smaller alleyways, a lot of them are also one way, and kind of branching off from them are going to be kind of more sort of unique little areas and kind of back alleys and little kind of openings like this one. I'm adding this little kind of roundabout thing here. I'm kind of thinking this would be like a drop off point maybe for service vehicles, maybe garbage trucks service this part. So they don't have to deal with kind of the more heavy pedestrian traffic on the main street. I'm also thinking that some of these sort of apartment buildings would have entrances back here. So yeah, I played around a little bit with the ground surface. As you can see, I had the sidewalk network kind of extend out here and then kind of use procedural objects to have this kind of plaza for these residential buildings kind of go under it almost. And then kind of I use a little bit of a planter here just to hide up a part of the terrain mesh that was clipping through. Um, but yeah, another the thing that's going to be challenging about this town, again, I mentioned it already, is the height differences. I think it's going to be manageable because this is not going to be a very big town. It's going to be, kind of just like a small village, really. But which is, I think, going to be good because I can sort of play around with the height differences, but I don't have to worry about building a really big city because that would be really tedious and really difficult. Yeah, I think the scale of this town will make it a little bit more doable to um, see what I can do with height differences and just sort of making things a little bit more interesting. Going back to some of the detailing I'm doing, you see I put down a bunch of kind of tire marks and stains. I'm doing adding a bunch of bikes on a bike rack here. These are the type of things that I think are going to make this town really come alive, make it look a lot more interesting. Again, adding kind of the really detailed markings everywhere I can, basically adding the sidewalks, adding every kind of type of line that I think would be functional or needed for kind of this to be functional in real life. I'm adding in here. Um, One, I guess I mentioned this at the beginning or near the beginning of the episode, but I'm using this curbless road pack, which also comes with these less than 1 unit wide alleyways, which I think are going to work really well. It's this kind of road here at the bottom of the screen is one of those. There's definitely little like parts of it where the terrain mesh clips through the road because it's too narrow within the confines of the game, but it's something it's pretty easy to get around just using like a clipping network. And yeah, this is again kind of just another intersection I'm marking up. This is a kind of smaller scale one, and I'm going to kind of use the copy and paste feature to kind of just get the exact same format here, and then use like the sort of points on the lines to kind of shift them around so that they kind of fit into the context a little bit better. I'm going to start doing adding some trees here again, also with intersection marking tool. I think really this it's not a new series, but this part of the series is basically going to be me just seeing or just like trying to use every possible part of intersection marking tool, kind of using it to its full ability. And that's another, I'm adding again trees, props. I'm doing like some of these lines here. Obviously, if you can see that the road network only comes with 3 sets of sort of lines for intersection marking tool. So I'm adding different rules on different lines to kind of get these props and trees kind of all overlapping with each other. Um, which again is kind of tedious, but it's definitely the best way to get these really detailed roads. Kind of adding cracks and stains, again, those tire marks on the curved sections really help, I think, help uh, bring everything together. I'm adding a couple of awnings here, kind of to mix up some of these buildings. A lot of these buildings are going to end up being kind of repetitive, again, kind of repetitive from earlier episodes in the series. So it's important to add planners and storefronts like this to kind of mix things up and make them look a little bit more unique. I mean, it's not a terrible thing for there to be some overlap with the buildings. Obviously, it's all the same country, and a lot of these were probably built at the same time, at least in kind of the backstory of the series. But yeah, just adding some kind of street frontage detailing to kind of mix things up. Adding some plazas, terraces, awnings, all that stuff will be a big part of the series going forward. And yeah, playing around with kind of some of these curved areas, adding a little bit more unique variety here, kind of making that a vocal point, I think is a good idea. And yeah, again, using the copy and paste to kind of move down to this little section. This is another part of the footage that I lost when I was building the church. I also added this little like sort of almost like side road here, and you'll see here in a second I end up making this into a kind of bus lane, and this is something I haven't really fully fleshed out yet, but I'm imagining that there'll be a local bus network here. I don't think this town is realistically going to be big enough to support a like an intercity transit mode bigger than that. I don't think we'll do any kind of trams or anything here, but I'm imagining the bus service will be pretty good. Obviously, there's the train station, so there'll be some intercity trains. But yeah, I felt like this was a good place to add a kind of custom bus station here, using a lot of the again poppable surfaces. And these are those like curbless roads that actually don't have curbs on them that I was talking about earlier. And yeah, this allows you to create really detailed, really intricate nodes. I'm still not quite an expert at this. There's definitely some things that aren't perfect if you look really closely. But yeah, I'm going to try to get better at kind of using all the tools that are available with intersection marking tool. Some things obviously you've already seen before with kind of the fillers and the using different colors and stuff. But yeah, this is a part of the city that I think is coming together really well. I mean, it's obviously kind of early days, and there's a lot more to do to kind of flesh things out. But yeah, I'd appreciate if you are enjoying the kind of return to CS1. Let me know back down in the comments. Yeah, comment any ideas you have for maybe storylines or future builds on this side of the country. I'll be sure to check those out, and yeah, hopefully I can keep this series going a little bit longer. I was definitely feeling like I was hitting a bit of a block, building in Nyrstad. Maybe I'll get back to that at some point, but I think it was a good idea to kind of start anew a little bit, kind of just on the other side of the map. Yeah, start fresh, all of those good things. I mentioned this earlier on in the video, but I want to do a lot of these kind of pedestrianized areas. As you can see, I'm building some of these apartment or kind of residential looking buildings facing an alleyway here, but I think these are the type of areas that will make the town look really interesting. You'll see I'll add some more cobblestone decals, kind of similar to what I did in Vestanland, or at least this is still Vestanland in Nyrstad a little bit early on. Um, yeah, I didn't really detail this particular spot today, but I think in the future these are the type of areas I'm going to spend a lot of time detailing, just to kind of again give the town a little bit more character. I think it's easy. I should say Nierstead is not that big of a city in the grand scheme of things, and I didn't want it to be that big because I wanted to spend time detailing. But even a city that size, it gets a little bit unwieldy in terms of trying to detail every part of it. I think that's why I'm really excited about building this town here, which again still does not have a name. So again, that's another thing you guys can comment if you have any name suggestions. Um, yeah. Anyway, getting back to the kind of my mindset going into this town, I think this is going to be the right scale to really flesh out all the detailing that I possibly can. I did a good job sort of getting started on it this in this episode. There's definitely some more kind of ideas I want to flesh out and get kind of into the town. But yeah, I think this is what I really come to enjoy about City Skylines 1 is all the tools that the sort of modding community has come together to develop and allow you to build these hyper detailed, like sort of ridiculously realistic cities. I think it's something that it's something that I think is really cool, and I hope you guys appreciate seeing more of it because yeah, that's what the next few episodes in this series at least will be about. I said I wasn't going to talk about the intersection marking tool as much going forward, but here it is again. Um, yeah, this is definitely this thing I spend the most time doing, just kind of making sure everything looks as perfect as it can. It's a lot easier when you can kind of copy and paste the templates, as I've mentioned before. This is kind of the edge of, or at least the, I guess, western edge of what I get done in this particular episode is this kind of last road before the ocean front. I think there's probably gonna be a whole episode dedicated to building and detailing sort of a waterfront plaza, and then I'm imagining kind of having kind of stairs down to a beach area. In terms of where the country of Essenland sits kind of in the real world, it's in the North Atlantic Ocean, which I've talked about before, but I'm imagining it's far enough south that you probably could go to the beach. It's not tropical or anything like that, but I think it would make sense to build out like a beach area. I think it would be, at least in the summertime. I would imagine this town would probably be known for that. Probably be kind of a resort town. again, I think that's probably part of the backstory for this place. Maybe there's like a, kind of some old industry that is why this town started here. It'd probably be fishing or shipping industry or something like that. But yeah, a lot of ideas to kind of sort through and think about. As I said before, if you have anything cool, like, let me know. I'll check it out. Um, but yeah, I'm getting kind of close to the end of the episode. I'm gonna do put down a few more buildings just to kind of finish this part of the town. I encourage you to stick around for the cinematics because um, getting a chance to kind of, I enjoyed making the cinematics, getting a chance to look at kind of how everything was coming together. I think it looks pretty good. As you can see, I mean, I'll touch on this again. I'm mixing together these kind of steep roofed or steep pitched roofs and the kind of normal flatter ones, which I don't know how realistic that would be necessarily, but I kind of like that variety. So I think I'll probably keep building like that. The very last thing I do is start adding these traffic lights, which is something that I have not done really at all, but you'll see I do this. It takes a little bit while. It takes a little bit of time to kind of sift through all the options for all the different configurations. But yeah, in the end, I think this is an important detail to add, and I think it looks pretty good. But anyway, this is, as I said, the last part of the episode. So I thank you guys again for watching. Yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you want to check out or want to get more involved with the channel, check out the Discord link in the description. And yeah, again, thanks for watching, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video.